Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
So happy to be back. So happy to be back right where I belong, the famous and revered Attila the Hun chair at the distinguished and prestigious Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. This, by the way, the largest free education institution in the world. There are no graduates, there are no degrees, because the learning never stops. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. We've changed the email address. Let me remind you of this again. It's now lrushbo@eibnet.us. Just change the domain there. It's no longer .com. It's eibnet.us if you'd rather get hold of us by email. So, folks, let us review the last few days that have transpired here in our great country. Donald Trump, presidential candidate, Republican side, visited Louisiana. They've had some terrible flooding there. There hasn't been one representative of the Obama administration get even close to Louisiana. I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Jay Johnson went for a day. The guy who spells his name J-E-H. Okay, Jay Johnson went for a day. Who is he, Homeland Security? Right. Okay, so the Homeland Security guy went down there for a day. Hillary Clinton decided to stay in Martha's Vineyard for her husband's 70th birthday party. Obama continued his vacation in Martha's Vineyard, getting in his 10th round of golf. Did you see the photo mock-up that Drudge posted? This is one of the greatest, if of all times. There's a little Beamer station wagon that's practically flooded, completely flooded, along with a bunch of other cars in Louisiana, and Obama is on the roof hitting a chip shot of the BMW on his way to Louisiana. It is just, this is the kind, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to make fun of leftists. You're not supposed to laugh at them. They don't have any sense of humor where this stuff is concerned. And it was fantastic. So Trump goes down to Louisiana and actually helped with the relief efforts. And there were people down there saying, oh, we knew you'd come. We knew you would come to help us. We were hoping you would come. CNN says Trump got there too soon. The people of Louisiana, the officials of Louisiana, they're not ready for any of this yet. They need another week of suffering before they're... They need another week of suffering before they're ready for the logistics necessary to accommodate Obama. Obama was supposed to go in there tomorrow. He's coming back from Martha's, playing another round of golf today. Supposed to go down there tomorrow. Now I'm told he might not get down there till Thursday. There doesn't seem to be any outrage. And again, people ask me frequently, Rush, why is there no outrage within the general population over X move by Obama or something Obama didn't do? And the retort is, well, nobody knows. You and I know that he hasn't gone. We follow it. But the low information crowd, which everybody's waiting to get mad. I mean, when we talk about when are people getting outraged, let's admit it, we're talking about people who they're not daily followers in depth of political things. But how can they not know this? How can people not know Obama hasn't gone to Louisiana? Maybe because Kanye West hasn't gone on a rant about it. Maybe because Kim Kardashian hasn't gone on a rant about it. Barbara Streisand's ticked off, but only at Siri. You heard about this? Barbara Streisand's mad, not at Obama not going down to Louisiana. She's mad that Siri mispronounces her name. Well, this is incredible. Barbara Streisand was on NPR. They got it to talking about, I don't know how it even came up. But she started complaining that Siri isn't any good because it mispronounces her name. It calls her Streisand instead of Streisand. The soft S is pronounced as a Z by Siri. So she said she called the head of Apple. That'd be Tim Cook. And Tim Cook said, okay, I personally will fix it. We're going to put out an update to iOS 10 on September 30th, and we will fix the way Siri pronounces your name. Now, a couple of things. Barbara Streisand can fix the way Siri pronounces her name on her iPhone or iPad right now, and so can you. You can go to your phone, you can call up Siri and tell it how to pronounce your name. Just say, my name is pronounced X. You can tell Siri, please call me Superstar. Please call me what, and Siri will refer to you as that from now on. It's a server-side update. Tim Cook doesn't have to go in and issue a software update to change the way Siri pronounces words. They can do that on the Siri server side. So I don't know what she's talking about. Besides, iOS 10 update on September 30th, if there is one, it would be a patch, because iOS 10 is going to come out around September. I'm guessing 15th or 16th, something in there. And if they come out with a thing on September 30th, it'd be 10.0.1 or some little patch. But there's no reason to think Streisand knows what she's talking about. Anyway, that's what she's upset about. Is the way Siri. You didn't know you could change the way Siri pronounces your name? All you got to do is just call Siri up, my name, or any name. Like if let's say that you have a friend with a name that you want to tell Siri to text. How many people know you can do this? You call up Siri and say, hey, Siri, send a text. No, hey, Siri, send a message to my wife. If on your contact card you list or on your wife's contact card in your contacts app, you list her as your spouse, then Siri will know. If you have a friend with a weirdly pronounced name, that's because it's your phone. It's asking you what your wife's name is. You don't have a wife, so but you can say whatever you want to say there. But if it's a card, if it's a contact card in your contacts app, then Siri will forever know that whoever that contact is your wife. But all you have to do is, if you've got a friend with a weird pronouncing name that you or it's hard to pronounce, it doesn't pronounce the way it's spelled, you can simply tell Siri how the name is pronounced, and she will know from then on out. The Streisand doesn't need an update for this. So anyway, all of this talk about Trump to Louisiana, and the drive-bys are saying he doesn't mean it. He just tried to take advantage of Obama not being there. There's nothing Trump can do. Trump doesn't really mean it anyway, and he doesn't. You know what all of these things that are never, ever said. When a Democrat goes to the sign of when the Clintons go to Haiti, anybody say, well, he can't do anything. What are the Clintons going to do? Except find a way to get rich off of it, frankly, is what the Clintons do. So the drive-bys are saying Trump doesn't mean it. There's not very much he can do. All he's going to do is gum up the logistics because it's too early. Local authorities don't want people down there. But they never, ever. In fact, the Washington Post, did you hear this? Did you hear this excuse they gave for Obama not going there? Obama has long opposed the theatrical aspects of politics. Oh, yeah. Obama knows this is just a photo op. There's nothing he can really do. Obama can't pass out enough goods to help people. There's nothing Obama can do. There's nothing any single person can do in terms of actually helping people rebound from the disaster. There's nothing tangible. And Obama knows this because he's so much smarter than all the rest of us. And he knows that all it is a photo op. All it is cheap theatrics. And, of course, Obama, he has no interest in that. Right? The guy who gave his acceptance speech in 2008 in front of a bunch of styrofoamed Greek columns. Barack Obama, who wanted to give a speech at the Brandenburg Gate in Germany. Barack Obama is above the theatrical nature of politics. The lengths they go to cover for Obama. It's clear he doesn't care. Now, let me say something else here, though, for just 1 second about this. These presidential visits to disaster areas, in one sense, they are misrepresentatious or misrepresentative, let me say it that way, because there really isn't, other than maybe providing some uplifting inspiration or tangible evidence that there is concern from the highest levels and that help is on the way. There's nothing really a single individual can do. But as conservatives, let me ask, are you a little troubled by the fact that anytime there's a disaster anywhere, that the place can't heal, the situation cannot possibly get better unless somebody from the government shows up? I have been not nervous, dubious of this, because it's always the Democrats always end up getting credit for this kind of thing. It plays into their great intentions, their big hearts, how much they care. But it's like every other thing that big government does. They don't do anything. It doesn't really matter, except they end up being credited and promoted as having great intentions, big hearts, huge compassion. So here Trump goes down and actually helps pass out some relief supplies, and he gets trashed as being insincere, or he's trying to capitalize on a natural disaster. It's beneath him. He shouldn't be there. He's not president anyway. What does he think he is doing? So it's just classic. No matter what a conservative or Republican attempts to do in the area of good works, particularly in a campaign, the drive-by media is going to be all in to blow it up and destroy it. And, of course, we've got examples of hypocrisy that are just exploding here. Barack Obama in 2005? Whenever Hurricane Katrina hit, he was Senator Barack Obama at the time, just gave George W. Bush hell for not going down to New Orleans. Just reamed him a new one for not caring enough to go to New Orleans. And show solidarity with those whose lives had been turned upside down because of Hurricane Katrina. To the audio sound bites. This is September 6, 2005. This is on the floor of the Senate. Barack Hussein O., who stayed in Martha's Vineyard the entire time of this flood and is still there playing golf.
I can say from personal experience over the last week how frustrating it has been, how unconscionable it has been to be unable to find somebody in charge so that we can get medical supplies, doctors, nurses, and other supplies down to the affected areas quickly enough. If there's any bright light that's come out of this disaster, it's the degree to which ordinary Americans have responded with speed and determination, even as their government has responded with what I consider to be unconscionable ineptitude.
There you go, unconscionable ineptitude. George W. Bush nowhere to be found other than at 10,000 feet, flying over the place, looking out the window of Air Force One. How insensitive, how uncaring. Barack Hussein Obama ripping into the government and begrudgingly praising the people on the ground for actually fixing and addressing their own problems. But he wasn't through. The campaign trail of 2008, here's Obama once again criticizing Bush's flyover of the disaster area at Katrina. Bush was not playing golf while people died. Bush was not on Martha's Vineyard hobnobbing with the swells. He was not in any way ingratiating himself with the elites as Obama was. But here we go again.
When the people of New Orleans and the Gulf Coast extended their hand for help, help was not there. When people looked up from the rooftops, for too long they saw an empty sky. When the winds blew and the floodwaters came, we learned that for all of our wealth and our power, something wasn't right with America. We can talk about what happened for a few days in 2005, and we should. We can talk about levees that couldn't hold, about a FEMA that seemed not just incompetent, but paralyzed and powerless, about a president who only saw the people from the window of an airplane instead of down here on the ground trying to provide comfort and aid.
Oh, yeah, so people love that. And here, that same guy could not be dragged off the golf course, doesn't care enough. Where is the similar outrage among the American people? Screw the media. We know the media is not going to express. Where is the outrage? Where are the American people angry? Can't find it, don't see it, don't understand it. Obama stays on Martha's, and of course Hillary, she can't even be bothered. She's got to hang in at Bill's 70th birthday party, because if she didn't, who knows what kind of women would show up. We'll get into this in a little bit more detail as the program unfolds, but one of the many things Trump did, series of speeches recently, is make an appeal to African-American voters. Now, this is something that Republicans have been urging Republican leaders to do frequently. It's a political thing rooted in the fact that if the Democrats could just be forced to lose 10% of the African-American vote, that it would seriously damage the Democrats' presidential aspirations, because they routinely get 90 to 93% of the African-American vote, and it's assumed that there's nothing to be done about it. But yet there are often calls, and have been for decades, for Republicans to make an appeal. And there have been several. Jack Kemp, Enterprise Zones, actually went to urban neighborhoods to pitch various plans or proposals that would facilitate the building and creation of black small businesses, selling entrepreneurism, and so forth. And there have been others that have made efforts to convince African Americans that they're wasting their vote with the Democrat Party. I don't recall anybody doing it the way Trump is doing it. The way Trump is doing it is to just look at them and say, what have you been getting for it? Now, I'm going to use my own words to convey the same message that Trump tried to get across, which is, you have been voting for the Democrat Party for 50 years. You have, every 4 years, voiced the same complaints, the same injustices, the same racism, the same unfairness, the same stacked deck. And yet, after all of these years and after all these Democrats being elected, you still complain about the same things. And your life circumstances certainly haven't improved. Look at black teenage unemployment. Look at black adult unemployment. So Trump mentions all this in his own way. He says, what have you got to lose by voting for me? Because how much worse can it get? It's an intriguing appeal, and I think it's effective by virtue of the Democrat media reaction to it. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations daily. Rush Limbaugh, your bulwark, your guiding light. Here at 800-282-2882. I like the way Trump made his pitch for African-American votes, and I'll tell you it's effective. And the reason I know it's effective is not because of anything I've heard from the African-American community. I've rather heard and read media reaction to it. They are loaded for bear. They are outraged that Trump would make an appeal to African-American voters. And then you know what I saw? I wish I would have printed this out. I was really hoovering news. I was trying to make up. I've been off the grid for a couple days. And this was Saturday, and I forget where I saw this. It's not necessary to anybody go out and find it. A series of stories, there might have been 2 stories, written by drive-by reporters trying to make the case that, hey, life in America isn't that bad for African Americans. And I said, well, this is new. Seems to me that every bit of reporting on African American is that it's one of the worst things that could happen to you is to be black in America. And that's been the tenor of the coverage of African American news and stories my entire life. Filled with sympathy and sorrow and all the discrimination and the racism and the historical precedents of slavery and all these horrible, rotten things that America is guilty of, making it practically impossible to be African American in America. Trump comes out and makes a direct appeal to them, and then they just do a 180 and start saying, well, you know, black unemployment's not that bad. And they start citing middle-class income figures, home ownership statistics to try to indicate that, hey, it isn't that bad for African Americans. Isn't this fascinating? Where's this story been for 50 years? Life for African Americans in America. Not bad at all. You've never seen that until Trump makes his pitch. And what he said is, what the hell do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose? And by the way, these are not things he's made up. These are statistical truths, and they oftentimes are complaints that you actually hear from the mouths of African-American leaders like the Reverend Jackson or Al Sharpton. I mean, they're the ones promulgating this stuff. They're the ones that need there to be this perception that life for African Americans is the dregs. And, of course, the reason for that is racism and bigotry and discrimination, thereby needing the race industry to defend these African Americans against this onslaught of unfairness that is intrinsically baked into the United States of America's existence. And then Trump comes along, and I think it's a reasonable appeal. Now, what Trump didn't say that I think is implied here when he says you're living in poverty, your schools are no good, you have no jobs, 58% of your youth is unemployed. He talks about immigration. That's not going to help any of these circumstances with all these illegal immigrants and refugees pouring into the country. And then the Democrats turning their favorites, the attention on favorites, new favorites such as gays and lesbians and bisexual transgenders and so forth, taking the African-American vote for granted. But the point is that the implied message of what Trump says is that the circumstances that blacks and their leaders complain about haven't changed. In fact, you could possibly accurately say that there's more anger in America today than there was 10 years ago, certainly more than there was 8 years ago. There is more anger in this country than there was 8 years ago. There hasn't been any resolution of that. There hasn't been any unity. There hasn't been any softening of tensions, relaxing of tensions. It's gotten worse. Exact opposite what people hoped would result from electing the first African-American president, Barack Hussein. So the implied question is, you've been voting for the Democrat Party your entire life and for the entire life of your grandparents, and you're still complaining about the same things, and you're right. You're still living in poverty. Inner city schools are the dregs. Unemployment, African-American unemployment, is double or triple what the national rate is. And it's 58% for youth African-Americans. So where is all of this improvement? Where are the results of the Democrat Party looking out for you? Thus the question, what the hell do you have to lose? I have always thought an appeal like that would work. I've never heard that appeal. The appeals that I have seen made by Republicans, I mean, they're good, they're admirable. I mean, they do contain and consist of personal outreach. I mean, Jack Kemp actually went out to African-American neighborhoods all over the country and pitched his enterprise zones, which was basically a government program designed to promote black entrepreneurism, leading to black small businesses, leading to black independence, because that was the objective. I mean, the conservative Republican objective is independence from government for everybody, not dependence on government. The message is that dependence on government has led to perpetual poverty. Dependence on government has led, I mean, who's running the schools? Who runs all of these cities with all of these dilapidated schools and dilapidated city services? Who's been running them for years? It's a legitimate pitch. It is a legitimate outreach. Needs to be made more than once. And, of course, each time it's made, the media is going to savage Trump and savage the effort. And they're going to fact-check it, and they're going to report that Trump is lying about how horrible circumstances are for African Americans. But it's this very media which has been telling us this story for all 50 years. about how impossible life for blacks in America is and how it's continually getting worse, how racism is getting worse, discrimination is getting worse, white privilege is now, I mean, it's gotten to the point now where white students on college campus have been so guilted. They have been ladled with so much guilt over being white that they are suggesting it would be wrong to have white roommates. They don't want that because there's too much white privilege. They have benefited unfairly. They feel appropriately guilty. All of this has been done by the drive-by media and the professors, the entire liberal culture, spreading this word. So I find it fascinating that when Trump makes his pitch, the media comes out and immediately starts reporting stories. Hey, it's okay in the black communities. Life is okay for African Americans. It isn't nearly as bad as Trump said. Well, you can't have it both ways. So we'll see. This presidential campaign is unlike anything anybody has seen, and it's really hard to handicap. I also saw something else that I think this was Friday, because I was flying back home from my 2-day business trip. I think it was Friday. Dana Perino was telling Mr. Snerdley, did you see this? You didn't see it. It was on the 5, I think. Or it might have been a show on Fox where she was a guest analyst or commentator. But she delivered a commentary, or she made a statement that she just looked really in pain. It looked like the last thing she wanted to say. And what she told people was, if you think the polls are wrong, they're not. The polls are right. And you had better get with the program and understand it and admit it. Otherwise, you're lying to yourself. She said, I did the same thing back in 2012. I thought the polls were undersampled of Republicans, oversampled Democrats. I thought everything was wrong. I thought Romney was going to win by 6 points at least. I thought the polls had it all wrong for a host of reasons, and the polls ended up being dead on right. And I'm never doing that again. I am never going to look at polling data and automatically throw it out, particularly when you've got 34, 35 polls right now that show a Hillary victory of one size or another. She said the polls are not wrong. And she looked at the camera and said, I will never lie to you. I can't lie to you now. And you could tell she was uncomfortable with it because the assumption was that her audience doesn't want to hear this. I mean, she's on Fox News. And the assumption in her heart, I'm sure, was the audience wants to hear every day, these polls are wrong. You don't fall for it. You keep your chin up. Keep thinking positive. We're going to show everybody. She couldn't do that anymore, she said. She's got to do the polls are right. It's not looking good. Well, there is movement in the polls, folks. And even old Nate Silver at 538 is saying this thing's not over yet. Trump is beginning to trend in the right direction. Other poll analysts are pointing this out as well, but then asking, is it too late for this? Is there enough time? Can Trump continue this trend? Can Trump continue to tighten the race? And then there are a couple of polls that show Trump up. That new LA Times poll done with USC has Trump up after being down by 3. Now, this is the poll the week of the Democrat convention. Trump was up 7, lost that lead through the Democrat convention in a week and a half after. Then it tied, and Hillary went ahead by 3 in that poll. Now Trump's back up by half point. This is the poll that has 3,000 people, 400 of whom never change. And they take the poll every day, report the results at midnight every night on the left coast, so it's 3 a.m. Eastern time when they update it. And Trump's back in the lead by a half point or a point. There's a Rasmussen poll, a couple others, I think, that have Trump up anywhere from 1 to 3 points. But the vast majority still have Hillary winning. And it's fast. She's not doing anything. Hillary's not going on TV. She's not doing any campaign appearances. But it is fast. They're almost panicked in the Hillary camp about fundraising. They're sending out fundraising letters as though they're in the middle of a crisis. It's weird. But you know what? It's clear, folks. You've got the Democrats. There's stories in the Washington Post. Hillary's already starting to work on her presidential agenda. Hillary's donors and Hillary's campaign advisors and Hillary's potential cabinet members all getting together and starting to plan out the presidential agenda. They've got it in their minds. It's over. They have it won. And the way they're going to make sure it stays won is Hillary is going to hibernate. She's not going to show up because they know the more she shows up, the greater the chance are her poll numbers will decline. So she's not going to do a press conference. She's not going to do rallies. She doesn't have to. The media is her campaign. The media destroys Donald Trump for her every day, free. She doesn't have to spend any money. Of course, she's going to. She is, and she's raising money. But the media is her campaign. The New York Times, ABC, CBS, NBC, something that pointed out here weeks ago. Hillary doesn't have to do anything. Her campaign is the American mainstream media. Quick time out, back with more in a moment. Don't go away. By the way, one more thing on Trump's appeal to African-American voters. Hillary, of course, poo-pooed it, thought it was insane, stupidest thing she's ever seen. The drive-by media is suggesting, Washington Post, it's hard to imagine a much worse pitch that Donald Trump could have made for the black vote. Did you hear what CNN tweeted? Trump wants GOP to court black voters, then slams voting rights for felons. Now, you might not notice anything about that if you race through that, if you just read that headline. But what does this headline actually indicate? What does it show? That in the eyes of CNN, all felons happen to be black. So where is the racism here? Trump wants GOP to court black voters and then slams voting rights for felons. So CNN is attempting to say Trump's lying or Trump's a hypocrite, because over here, Trump is saying, hey, let's make a pitch and get the African-American vote. And then he wants to deny felons the right to vote. Well, in the eyes of CNN, it must be that all felons are black. Not Trump that said it. That's CNN's reaction. Of course, others drive by, picked that up and ran with it. Once again, illustrating that the racism in this country is institutionally found on the left. That's who look at people and judge them by the color of their skin or their sexual orientation. It's just amazing. Anyway, let's start on the phones here so we get that done. Columbus, Ohio first. Mark, great to have you. You're welcome and hi. I guess you're not there. Our phone's working. Okay, Mark's not there, so okay, we'll try Mike in Lansing, Michigan. Hello, sir. You there?
I was at the Trump rally in Diamondale. There were blacks in the audience, and the mile walk between the parking space and the sports complex, there were blacks selling all sorts of Trump stuff, one end to the other, and everyone was happy. The people in the audience, for what Trump had said to the blacks, were in cheers and happy to hear it. Because if you go to Detroit, that's exactly what you see, is the blacks who are being screwed by the Democrat Party for the last 50 years at least. And they have no voice at all in their futures at all.
So let me say, you're talking in Lansing and in Detroit, you're seeing a lot of African-American support for Trump.
There were people, not in the cities itself. I don't know that. But I'm just saying what I saw when I was at the rally, that the people outside were happy. The people in the audience, there's about 4,000 people, were happy with what Trump said in every point he made. And when I was in Detroit, the white people left the city because there were no jobs, and the people who were left have no jobs, and the schools, as you already know nationally, are in the tank, and the education department is doing nothing to change that. And the Democrats and the blacks are the ones who are suffering from it in Detroit and in Lansing as well.
Yes, but it's the Democrats keep getting elected there. That's the point here. Well, I misunderstood. I thought anyway, let me take a break here, folks. We'll do that and be back in just a second. Don't go away. Yeah, we'll get into that. Trump and his change of tone. And get your reaction to that. Also this, Washington Post, the FBI's uncovered tens of thousands more documents in the Hillary Clinton email probe, the year-long investigation into her private email. And how about trying to blame it on Colin Powell? And how about Colin Powell coming back and saying they're trying to pin this on me rather than taking the heat for her? Wow. Back in just a second, folks. Don't go away. Hey, welcome back. The views expressed by the host of this program, documented to be almost always right. What is it on? It's 99.8%. That's right. It's 99.8% of the time. There's not much room for growth there, folks. That accuracy rating might actually not change for a year. I mean, you got to be right again and again and again and again and again to move it off of that. I mean, that's a high bar. And we strive to maintain it each and every day. Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. We've got a guy coming up on the phones here who thinks that this election, and it's a good point, it's not about left or right. It's not about particularly Republican versus Democrat or conservative versus liberal, but rather something else. Nationalist versus globalist. Populist versus globalist. And I think that's right in many ways. I think there's still ideological components to this race, particularly in the area of Trump's outreach to African Americans. Now, clearly, if you want to do that and do it right, there has to be an ideological component to it. And there's some other things in the campaign that are that way. But Trump is not one of those people. Trump is not an ideological person per se. I mean, that's not how he defines himself or other people. Whereas you and I might look at Teddy Kennedy and say, oh, wow, this is a far fringe leftist extremist. Trump doesn't see him that way. He sees him something else, maybe not complimentary, but he doesn't see him in terms of liberal versus conservative. That's just who Trump is. And the Trump support, therefore, is really not a left versus right thing. But for me, it's an opportunity. I always think that I've always believed that there's not been enough focus on that in terms of educating people just what liberalism is. One of the reasons why people, for example, are so fed up with globalism is it's liberalism that has given us this. You know, I have to laugh at people who want to try to define the nation's founding as something other than what it was. What is the Constitution? The Constitution is a document, the first of its kind in the history of the world, outside of Magna Carta, which limited government. Right there, you have a conservative document by definition. Now, if you get into the classic intellectuals who want to start talking, they'll call that classic liberalism. Don't be confused by it. Whenever you see the word liberal and somebody trying to make you think the old liberalism is actually conservatism, it's just going to confuse you. And don't fall for it. Some of the conservative eggheads like to call conservatism classic liberalism, and it means something way, way back before the communists and the socialists got a hold of it. But anyway, the left comes along, and the left wants to tear it up. The left wants to avoid it. They want to run around it because they believe in something other than limiting government. They want just the exact opposite. So the Constitution is a target for the Democrats. It's a target for the left, and I don't think there's been enough education of it. But that's just me. We've done what we can on this program trying to inform as many people as we can what liberalism is, because this whole globalist versus nationalist debate has resulted from liberalism triumphing all over the world. And people are fed up with it. They don't want it anymore. And it's a shame they don't know that what they oppose is liberalism. But it is liberalism and the belief in expanding government, global government, one world government, whatever. All of that is found on the left side of the spectrum. And that spectrum is now housed in the Democrat Party. So all of these people who don't, they claim not to like politics because it's just, I don't care about politics. Politics is argumentative. They don't understand that liberalism is quintessential politics. And liberalism is what has given us this globalism that they all despise. And that's why some people are trying to say that populism is the new conservatism, and some conservatives just blanch at that, and they don't want anything to do with it. The classic conservative, the true blue conservative, doesn't want anything to do with nationalism. They think nationalism doesn't get close to describing conservatism, that there's very little in common between the two. But regardless, there is ground to be gained, I think, in explaining why globalists are globalists. What's made them globalists. I mean, to be a globalist, you have to care less and less about your own country. And I have a story here that'll give you an idea of why Europe did Brexit, why Europe is fed up, why the people of Europe are fed up, particularly with the European Union. And it is similar to what happened here with quantitative easing, but this is even worse. Now, this is really in the weeds, so I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs of the story, and I'm going to tell you what this means. It's the Wall Street Journal, Seller's Paradise. Companies build bonds for European Central Bank to buy. Now, that's not how things work. That's the exact opposite of how this particular financial transaction takes place. But here are the details. 2 European firms have sold debt directly to the European Central Bank through private placements, a startling example of how the market is adapting to extremes of monetary policy. The European Central Bank's corporate bond buying program has stirred so much action in credit markets that some investment banks and companies are creating new debt, especially for the central bank to buy. In 2 instances, the European Central Bank has bought bonds directly from European companies through so-called private placements in which debt is sold to a tight circle of buyers, i.e. elites, without the formality of a wider auction and without competition driving the prices up. This is insiderism like you haven't seen it. Now, this is exactly why the Trump phenomenon exists. This kind of thing is exactly what... Here's the scam of this. Connected companies. Take your pick. It doesn't matter who they are in this instance. We're talking about in Europe right now with their version of the Federal Reserve. Connected companies are now designing securities, i.e. investment opportunities, for the central bank to buy. It's normally the other way around. The central bank is who prints, distributes, and finances and arranges the sale of these securities. In this case, it is companies that are designing their own securities for the central bank to buy from them. And it's all imaginary money. The central bank prints and then buys whatever these securities are, bonds from these companies. And as always happens in these scams, the guys at the front, the people that are first in on this, are the ones who are going to get rich. Because for them it is a huge credit on the balance sheet. But for the rest of the economy, especially people who were taught that it was responsible to save money, this is just what is happening here is business and the central bank are reversing roles. In other words, businesses are telling the central bank how they are going to operate. And the central bank is saying, okay, fine, we'll finance it for you. We'll buy your instruments. These companies are not innovating. They're not selling anything more to customers. They are not expanding or growing. They're not hiring employees. They're simply gaming the system whereby they And the investors who get first crack at this are the ones who are going to get rich off of it, while everybody else doesn't even know what's going on. And by the time they catch up with it and understand, it's too late. And I think what this actually means is that the people in Europe where this is happening understand that nothing is real, that everything's being propped up, everything is happening via cronyism. There isn't any real innovation. There isn't any real economic growth. There really isn't any real business growth. But they all want to try to make money anyway. So they found a way to do it by conniving with the central bank, the European Central Bank. And what's going to happen is, my take on this is these people understand that we are in a bubble right now where nothing is real. The economic numbers in this country are not. The unemployment numbers are not real. The economic growth numbers, I doubt that we're at even positive growth. The number is, 1%, 1.5%. Even if that's right, it's pathetic. It is anemic. And the government is growing larger and larger, meaning it's possible, it's getting harder and harder for the private sector economy to grow. And the private sector economy is where jobs are. It's where the American dream is. It's where the opportunity to acquire wealth is. It's shrinking. Number of people isn't shrinking. The number of people is growing, or at least staying level according to population replacement figures. However, more and more of them are going on welfare, staying on the welfare state, putting more pressure on government. They've got to come up with the money somewhere. And so they're looking at all of these oddball ways of financing growth without having to grow. It's almost as though they understand that all this is going to blow up at some point down the line, and they are taking care of themselves now before it happens. And it's a series of crony relationships between powerful elites at the European Central Bank and these select companies, not named, that are engaging in this new technique here. And it is... Let me tell you the difference. Quantitative easing, because when I first read this, I thought, this sounds like quantitative easing was when the Fed printed a bunch of money and gave it to Wall Street people to buy stocks and securities and so forth. But quantitative easing phase one was central banks buying up government debt, that is printing money. Printing money is buying up debt, so that they could allow connected banks and companies to buy and lend at artificially low rates. That was phase one of quantitative easing. Just print. By virtue of printing money, you are buying up government debt and then selling it to connected banks and companies at a very low interest rate so that they could then use that money to make money for themselves, to sell, to invest in the market so that the market continued to grow no matter what happened to the general economy. Now, in this phase that I just described in the Wall Street Journal story, the European Central Bank, what's happening is the central banks are basically printing money directly for the connected businesses. So instead of government issuing the bonds where anybody can have a chance to buy them, and thereby create competition for prices, the corporations are doing it themselves. They are issuing the bonds. The government isn't. The central banks are buying the bonds, not issuing them. And the central banks are buying them as if they were guaranteed U.S. government bonds. And the rich are getting richer here. The elites are taking care of themselves is what this adds up to. And this is what Europeans, whether they know and can explain it, this is what they felt. They can sense it. They know things are not right. Their economies are not growing. Nothing makes any sense. Nothing is making economic sense to the commonsensical eye. And the same thing is happening here. So it's little things like, well, these are not little, this is a big thing, but it's things like this which are creating this dynamic in this campaign of nationalism versus globalism. Because in this description, both of quantitative easing and what is going on in Europe with the ECB and these participating companies, national identity is irrelevant. What nation these people happen to be from is irrelevant. They don't see themselves as citizens of Denmark or of the United Kingdom or France or what have you, not in these transactions. And that's what's wrong with globalism. Globalism, by definition, erases borders and replaces the whole idea of the nation state to be replaced by government functioning or globally functioning institutions, including government. And people don't want any part of it. We'll find out how many, because that's what this election really is all about, as opposed to this left-right dynamic. But the left-right dynamic is still there in the individual issues, such as Trump's outreach to African Americans or tax policy or economic policy. The left-right dynamic is still there, if it can be properly explained. But the upshot of all of this is that there is now this great divide whereby the well-to-do, the elites, the ruling class, whatever you want to call them, in the old days, they've always existed, but they were Americans too. They did things not only to help themselves, but to help their country, because their companies were largely a function of the success of their countries. But now that doesn't seem to be as important as other considerations are. And that's what Trump's tapped into. That's what all this talk about free trade, that's what people mean when they talk about free trade. They're talking about the unfairness, the imbalance, the lack of patriotism, the lack of concern for national concerns and American people and so forth and so on. We'll find out just how many Americans are up to speed on this and are upset by it. And it's why, you remember Robert Costa, the Washington Post, 2 weeks ago now, 3 weeks ago, in talking about the seeming Hillary landslide, said, hold on just a second. You know, there's a bunch of people in this country that do not vote because they're fed up. And they don't vote regularly. And it may be half the country or more that doesn't vote, even in presidential races. Will they show up? They're not being polled. Polls are of registered voters, likely voters. They're not being polled. What are they going to do on Election Day? Are they already up to speed? Is Trump resonating with them and nobody's catching them? And there are a lot of people worried about that. Anyway, I got to take a break here, folks. Sit tight. Back with much more after this. Don't go away. Now, if you read this Wall Street Journal story, it's going to be gobbledygook to you unless you have a grounded understanding of high finance and definitions in high finance. But the upshot of this, one of the things that I want to try to take away from this for you, the European Central Bank's corporate bond buying program has stirred so much action in credit markets. Some investment banks are currently creating new debt, especially for the central bank to buy. That's called creating new placements. It's 180 degrees out of phase. The companies are creating debt for the central bank to buy, eliminating competition, eliminating auctions for these bonds and these instruments, which is how prices are kept low. The people doing this, the banks, the institutions, the companies that are doing this are the same people who have already donated majestically to the Clinton Foundation. These globalist types out for themselves, hedging everything to be protected against any kind of economic calamity, which is what this really is. People getting theirs before the bottom falls out. If you want to know what this really is, that's what it is. And the people running this show, some of the people in this operation are the same people, same institutions, same companies, same governments who have sent massive donations to the Clinton Foundation, meaning people who've already invested in the Hillary presidency. They have already bought Hillary Clinton and her administration on policy preferences. And that's how all of this works. And all of these people in the elite circles and the establishment work together. They are tied together. They look out for each other. They take care of each other. And whenever there's an economic collapse, they don't lose their second or third or fourth home, do they? They don't lose anything. And they then are the ones who end up getting bailed out because they end up being too big to fail. So globalism versus nationalism. What I've just described to you is globalism on steroids. And they are constantly reworking the rules and redefining them, all for their own self-protection and self-interest because they have the money and the power to do it. And this is artificial. There's no real economic growth that is propping up the prices of these instruments. So at some point, the bottom has to fall out. Whether it's big or small, you don't know till it happens. But they are protected when it does, is what one of the many aspects of this. And they've already bought Hillary. Poor Ryan Lochte. It's a shame this guy is not Hillary Clinton. You know, I know exactly what happened to Ryan Lochte. We'll get back to the phones here in just a second. And there's one more thing, not a new thing. There's something I need to emphasize about this European bank business as it relates to quantitative easing. Poor Ryan Lochte. You know exactly what the guy's going through. He's a great swimmer, right? The problem is he happens to be a great swimmer at the same time Phelps is. So we live in the era of social media. Social media equals fame. Fame equals attention equals money. Man, it's like there were all kinds of great golfers when Tiger Woods at his peak, but who knew? Tiger Woods, well, it's the same thing with Phelps. Phelps is winning all the golds. If Phelps wasn't around, Lochte would be winning a lot of golds, but he isn't. He wants to get noticed. He's frustrated. Second Olympics in a row where Phelps has just totally dominated. So Lochte does things to try to get noticed, and he succeeds. But now Ralph Lauren has dropped him. This is a second company that's dropped him as a spokesman, as an endorser. So depending on who you are, we will punish you in this country if you're a liar, depending on who you are. Ralph Lauren announces it'll not renew its sponsorship contract with Ryan Lochte. That's the second company. The first company was Speedo. Speedo said so long, so now it's Ralph Lauren. Poor Ryan Lochte. Now, you might be saying, I've had people say, isn't it a shame, Rush? This guy does something stupid like rob a gas station, lie about it. He's obviously just trying to get noticed. He's obviously pursuing fame. He's obviously frustrated, this or that. And over here is Hillary Clinton, who's really telling one whopper after another of consequence, serious lying that has to do with reaching the highest levels of power in the country, and nobody knows. And that's the key. The reason Ryan Lochte's world is falling apart is because the media won't let go of it. Everybody knows everything he did. It's on video. I don't know whether they've got something in for the guy or not, but this just shows if the same kind of attention were paid to Hillary Clinton, if the same look at Obamacare, it's a dismal failure. It is an embarrassing. It's a costly. It's a damaging dismal failure. If there was any attention paid to it whatsoever, but there isn't. And the same thing with Mrs. Clinton. The country does care about integrity. The country does care about quality, manners, and all this stuff. But if they don't hear about it, then they're not going to get agitated by it. And with Mrs. Clinton, they don't hear. I mean, James Comey goes out, does what he does, and when Mrs. No, that's not what he said. I didn't hear him say anything. And that's what gets spread around, what Mrs. Clinton's take on it is. It's a shame in a way, but that's how it happens. It's not that people don't mind if Hillary lies. It's they really don't know. Not like they have been told about Ryan Lochte. Man, his entire life has been put under a microscope. Hillary Clinton hasn't had, despite what people might think, she's not had destructive attention. She's not had the kind of attention that's designed to do real permanent damage from the drive-by media. Now, back to this whole business of the European Central Bank, quantitative easing. The key, folks, the thing that really is the easiest to understand about this is that there isn't any real money. The money is printed. In the case of the European central banks, they are printing money that does not exist. obviously. They are printing money and then buying these placements, these newly issued investment opportunities from these banks. They're printing the money. The money isn't real. And this is having already negative economic impacts. This story points out that because the money isn't real, the currency in the European Union is being devalued at a rate of about $90 billion a month in Europe, if I'm reading the story right. They're flooding the market with euros. They're printing money and giving it to corporations under the guise of investing in them. But they're not taking money from stocks elsewhere. They're not taking money that already exists. And then that money is being invested in things which will cause growth. They're printing money. That's what quantitative easing was. They're printing money to buy these securities. So it isn't real. It's not backed by anything. Okay, to the phones we go. People have been patiently waiting, and particularly Terry in Metairie, Louisiana. I want to get your take on this because you also think this is globalist versus nationalist. Yeah, so what's your take on it?
Absolutely, Rush. Absolutely. And I'm glad that you touched on everything on that aspect, but I think that you're missing a key component to it. You know, the corporatists are always going to end up being okay. They're almost going to end up like the lords of the old day. I think that what you're missing here, and you put all of it together very well, and I think it needs to be told more and more, but I think what you're missing is the disciples of Solinsky, Cloward and Piven, when they attempted to take down New York. They're trying to do this on a world level, okay? And I do believe that our administration is complicit with this, along with the other globalists.
Well, let me explain what that is, because this is a tough sell. I've tried this. I've tried explaining Cloward Piven to people. I know what it is. I can explain it to a T. I can, of course, explain Alinsky to a T because there's nobody better at deconstructing these destructive leftist ideas than I am. Nobody better at it than me. Cloward Piven, Francis Piven and Friedrich Cloward, or whatever the hell their names are, just hate the United States. They want the United States brought down, and their way of doing it is to flood the welfare system beyond the point of viability. They want as many people on the public dole demanding more as possible. They want to destroy as much employment as they can. They want to destroy all income-producing opportunity. They want to get rid of however people legitimately earn a living. They want to destroy businesses. They want to destroy nations. They want to destroy economic systems, really, and create this massive welfare state that cannot be supported either. Because when you create this massive welfare state that can't be supported, then you have a total government implosion, which is what they want. Because Cloward Piven and the Alinskys and the others who think this way think they really can't get where they want unless the existing capitalist structures of the world are destroyed. They don't believe they can be modified. They don't believe they can be moderately overtaken and changed. They don't think they can be transformed. It all has to be blown up and rebuilt. And when you rebuild it, the Constitution gets ripped up and flushed down the toilet. And you start day one building your utopia. Now, that's exactly what they want to do. And they're very open about it, and their professed way of accomplishing this is simply flooding the welfare system to the point that it can't be supported. So there is mass hunger. So there is mass. I mean, the Depression would look like a weekend at the beach compared to what they want. Okay, so that's what they want. That's their theory. That's their philosophy. So you go out and tell people, yep, that's what we're in the middle of happening. They can't believe it. You cannot make them believe that anybody would want to do that. You can't make them believe that anybody would think that's good. You can't make them believe that anybody would think that something good can come from all of that. It's a really tough. Meanwhile, there are people attempting to make it happen. That's what the people who believe this, that's what illegal immigration is. That's part of the flooding of the welfare system. It's the overwhelming of all the refugees coming in, the lack of concern over real jobs, income and career-type producing jobs. All of this, 94 million Americans not working and growing. But to try to convince people that this is being done on purpose, that it is somebody's policy, and then you have to name the person. Well, who's doing it? When you tell a skeptic this, well, this is what Obama wants. Oh, come on, Rush, come on. Can you? Well, and Hillary, oh, come on. Can you get serious? There's no way, Rush. You're not going to convince anybody that Obama wants the country to be destroyed or that Hillary wants it to be imploded. The world, you can't. So nobody's going to believe it. Therefore, it's not the way to go about it. I circle back to, okay, so then how do you explain what's happening? There are reasons. This is my single greatest source of frustration, is that there are explainable, easily explainable reasons for everything. I don't care who, if it's a millennial, if it's a seasoned citizen, if it's an illegal immigrant, if it is an immigrant, if there's a legitimate, explainable reason for everything that people think is going wrong. There's a reason why 94 million Americans are not working. There's a reason why your health care prices are through the roof and you can't afford it. There's a reason why prescription drug prices are through the roof and you can't afford it. There's a reason why your wages haven't gone up in 15 years. There is a reason for whatever it is that you think needs to be fixed, whatever's going wrong, there is an explainable reason for it that is directly traceable to policy. None of this is accidental. None of it is evolutionary. None of it is just happening. None of it is cyclical. This is all happening as the result of implemented policies. And if you have their interest at that point, then you can start getting into detailed explanations. But at some point, you're not going to be able to avoid ideological terminology, such as liberal, conservative, socialist, free market, you name it. And if people lose you when you start using the labels, then your problems of persuasion compound. Which, again, is why I have lamented the fact that we have done a very inept job of explaining what liberalism really is, because we are living it. Liberalism explains this globalist elite. Liberalism explains the plummeting economy and the plummeting job circumstance. Liberalism explains why health care and health insurance are such a mess and why you can't afford either. Liberalism explains it. Anyway, I'm a little long here. Going to take a break. Be back with more after this. Don't go away. By the way, the details of what's happening with the European Central Bank it's exactly what happened with solar and wind in this country. It's exactly, except the players were different. Instead of the European Central Bank, we had the Obama administration. And instead of corporations that were issuing investment vehicles with printed money, we have Obama donors. So we have people who donated to Obama in his presidential campaign. We have Obama who'd campaigned on getting rid of fossil fuels and coal and replace with clean energy. We're going to save the world from climate change. We're going to save our planet. We're going to save the sea levels. We're going to save the temperature. We're going to save everything. And part of this is getting rid of coal and oil, and we're going to have clean, renewable energy. So a bunch of people donate to Obama, and after he gets elected, we get a company created called Solyndra, and they are operating with money that the United States government gives them, grants them under the pretext that they need subsidies in order to get these new businesses going because they're brand new out of the box and the market's not there yet for them, so we need these subsidies. What happens? Have you heard of Solyndra? It's shut down. And all these other solar and wind entities that came into existence shortly after Obama was inaugurated, we heard all about them. They're not in existence anymore. And solar and wind are no further along than they were when Obama was immaculated. But the people who started those companies are sitting fat, dumb, and happy somewhere. They got paid back for their donations to Obama and then some. They got government money in the form of subsidies to start their businesses. And the businesses were not real. When you get right down to it, they weren't real. Solyndra is the biggest name of all of them, but there were a slew of these. And it wasn't just in this area, but the area of clean or renewable energy. And it had the support of the public because the public had bought into the idea that if we didn't do this, we're not going to have a habitable planet in 20 years. Then scared to death into believing that this is the end of us if we don't do something. And so the people applauded the investments, quote unquote, in these new startups in wind and solar. But they didn't last long. They were filing bankruptcy before anybody, not long after people first heard of them. It was scam from the beginning of the entire idea. And the objective was never to save the planet. The objective was never to set up a functioning business with renewable energy that would grow and grow and save the planet. It wasn't about that at all. It was about people who had spent money to get Obama elected, getting some back. And maybe then some. And getting a lot of cachet in the process. Except Obama didn't give back the money they gave him. Now, the money they gave him, he used for whatever elective purposes he wanted. Now, the money they got was from the United States government, from you, taxpayers, from the United States Treasury. And the same thing is going to happen with Hillary Clinton. What do you think roads and bridges and all this infrastructure is about? I mean, Obama already did it, right? He proposed this back in 2009. And here's Hillary doing it again. Well, we're going to need companies. We're going to need construction companies and techniques and new ideas and modernizing these roads and bridges. And I guarantee you that miraculous new ways of shoring up a bridge are going to be found, or some such company is going to miraculously appear that's got some technique to do it. And they'll be given a government grant because Hillary Clinton's assured us we're going to rebuild the country. But it's the same old, just the recycling of money, some of it printed, so the elites stay elite and afloat. 36 of the green companies Obama funded have shut down. More than 112 solar companies have closed their doors in 7 years since 2009. And that's the future. Solar and wind, that's going to save us, supposedly. And all of these businesses are gone. But not the people who started them. They're doing fine. Say, a quick question. Why is the Clinton Foundation not helping out Louisiana? I mean, I just saw here that the Crown Prince of Bahrain, which is one of these little Middle Eastern oil states, $32 million. A Crown Prince of Bahrain, $32 million to the Clinton Family Foundation. Why? What in the name of Sam Hill is a potentate from Bahrain going to get for $32 million? Well, it's going to be something, and it isn't going to be charitable works in Haiti, and it's not going to be charitable works at flood-ravaged Louisiana, is it? $32 million. And then Mrs. Clinton, you see what she said? She said, well, after I'm elected, we're going to start eliminating a lot of these donors and these donations because it wouldn't look right. Well, she didn't say it wouldn't look right. That was sort of implied. But not until she's elected. Greetings. Welcome back. Rush Limbaugh. Happy to be here. 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, a new email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. If you send to the old email address, it's gone. It is going to get obliterated. It might not even get sent back to you as address unknown. So make sure you make a note of the new email address, lrushmo@eibnet.us. The New York Post yesterday had a big story. Hillary campaign manager Robbie Mook has written a panicky email to Hillary Clinton supporters warning that fundraising numbers are dipping, adding, "This is how elections are lost." He says, "Our poll numbers are holding steady, which is good. We are growing our field organization. We're building out neighborhood teams in communities all over the country, which is even better. But that's happening at a time when our fundraising levels are frankly dipping. We have to remind ourselves that it's only August and that Donald Trump has more than enough time to find his way to a win by November." Let me tell you something. The Democrats are already planning her agenda as president. They're already having meetings about that. They think this election is over. They think the campaign is essentially over. They're not even worried about debates. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because they don't think Trump can keep up on policy. The one thing Hillary Clinton is a wonk. Hillary Clinton can talk policy meaninglessly, but in a way to make the low information crowd think that she is a genius on it, just on the basis of knowledge. She can start throwing out terminology, numbers, success stories, linking it to all of her efforts for children and so forth. She can name every freaking law and act that has been implemented since she was First Lady, and she can speak the public policy language, and Trump can't. So they're not even worried about that. They're not even worried she might have to take a 10-minute break to go to the bathroom, deal with some medical issue, whatever it is. Well, she did one during Bernie's debate. She vanished for 10 minutes, had to go to a long commercial break when she was gone. We still don't know why she vanished. So there's something clearly going on there. But whatever it is, they're not worried about it. They're not even worried about the debates. I know a lot of Trump people, "Hey, man, he may be down in the polls now in those debates. He's just going to kick her upside one wall and down the other." And they don't think so on the Hillary side. They don't think Trump can keep up with her for 10 minutes. And remember who's going to be moderating these debates. And remember the kind of questions Trump's going to be, Hillary's going to be asked, just to give an example, the nuclear triad. And she's going to be able to name generals and admirals who have had input in the nuclear triad. And she's going to be able to quote what that general or this admiral told her about what needs to be upgraded. Trump doesn't know what it is. Or didn't. Now, in the primaries, it didn't matter because that was not Trump's appeal. But I'm just telling you, this is why the Democrats are not even afraid of the debates. They think it's over, folks. And I'm telling you, it's so over. Hillary's not even doing rallies. It really is true. The drive-by media is her campaign. The drive-by media is taking Donald Trump out every day. The drive-by media is focusing solely on Trump and blowing him up every day. Whatever he says, whatever he does, they're doing their best to blow it to smithereens, poke holes at it, fact-check it, destroy it, whatever. I might have been one of the first to say years ago that journalism, as everybody thinks of it, has ceased to exist. That it's not news anymore. There isn't any news every day. It's the daily soap opera, and there's a script that's written called the narrative every day. And the narrative every day here is destroy Trump. Hillary doesn't have to. She's running ads. She has been running ads. Trump has an ad that he has started running, a national ad. I think it's national ad, maybe battleground state ad, not sure which. But and he's raising money, and they are concerned in the Clinton camp how much money Trump has raised. That's the one thing they're worried about. If they have a concern, it is television ads. They work. Trump hasn't been running any. If Trump starts a TV ad campaign, gets enough money, and has a focused message to go along with the ads, there are some people on the Democrat side that don't think it's over, or at least have the common sense to not act like it here in late August. But for everybody I've spoken to that has intimate knowledge of the Democrat Party, they think this is over and done. They think they are headed for maybe a 49-state landslide. They think Trump might not even reach 100 electoral votes. And the reason they think this is because they are totally devoted to the drive-by media, because the drive-by media is simply the Democrat Party. So let's go to the audio sound bites. We'll start here with Trump. This was Thursday night in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is the speech where many people say the best speech of the year. Trump admitted some mistakes, apologized for whoever he might have upset or offended or what have you. And the analysts dug deep into this, trying to, well, what happened here? Because this isn't what Trump thinks. Trump probably didn't think this. Is this Kellyanne Conway? Is she coming in there making Trump do this? And she's out there saying, no, this is all Trump. Here is how it sounded.
Sometimes in the heat of debate and speaking on a multitude of issues, you don't choose the right words or you say the wrong thing. I have done that. And believe it or not, I regret it.
Thank you.
And I do regret it, particularly where it may have caused personal pain. Too much is at stake for us to be consumed with these issues. But one thing I can promise you this, I will always tell you the truth.
Okay, so you remember the firestorm that created last Thursday night. The media is still calling attention to this, and what they're saying, and the Democrats do, they say, well, he didn't specify anything. So, does he really mean it? Did he really mean it? He didn't specify anybody he might have offended. He didn't apologize to anybody specifically. He didn't mention a damn thing. He's just speaking in generalities here. So he didn't really mean it. This is just his campaign chairman. This is Kellyanne Conway. She made him say it. And this has people now running around. I heard it Friday. I had people coming up to me, practically in tears. Rush, I can't believe it. They've chickified Trump. Oh, my God, Rush, what's happening? What's he doing apologizing for this stuff? Who's writing this stuff? Have you heard that from anybody? Well, the next bite, same speech, Charlotte, North Carolina.
The American people are still waiting for Hillary Clinton to apologize for all of the many lies she's told to them and the many times she has betrayed the American people at great danger to them. Tell me, has Hillary ever apologized for lying about her illegal email server and deleting 33,000 emails?
Why would she?
Has Hillary Clinton apologized for turning the State Department into a pay-for-play operation where favors are sold to the highest bidder, which is exactly what's happening?
Why would she?
Has she apologized for lying to the families who lost loved ones at Benghazi? Has she apologized for putting Iran on a path to nuclear weapons? Has she apologized for Iraq, for Libya, for Syria? Has she apologized for unleashing ISIS across the world?
Okay, so it looks like the Trump apology was to set up the reaming of Hillary for not apologizing. And Trump was not finished.
Speaking of lies, we now know from the State Department, just announced, that President Obama lied about the $400 million in cash that was flown to Iran. It was flown to Iran. $400 million in cash. He denied it was for the hostages, but it was. Just came out. He said, we don't pay ransom, but we did. He lied about the hostages openly and blatantly.
Trump's right about that. The State Department did come out. They had to. They were forced to. They had to admit the $400 million was paid for the release. And a Republican senator from Illinois, I think it was Mark Kirk, actually said this Obama guy's acting like a drug dealer. And the media started choking. Said, what do you mean a drug dealer? How the hell can you? Well, who is it that delivers cold cash under cover of darkness in the belly of an airplane? $400 million in cash. That's how drug cartels work. So even, and Trump's doing a teleprompter speech here, getting all revved up. So it looks like his apology was in part to be able to go after Hillary for not apologizing with some credibility. By the way, here's Obama. Let's just refresh our memory back on August the 4th.
We do not pay ransom for hostages. The notion that we would somehow start now in this high-profile way and announce it to the world, even as we're looking into the faces of other hostage families whose loved ones are being held hostage, and say to them that we don't pay ransom, defies logic. So that's point number 2. We do not pay ransom.
But we did, and the State Department effectively acknowledged it, that the $400 million was tied to the release of our hostages in Iran. But again, I guess it's greeted with a ho-hum by people. Well, okay, well, we understand Obama's not going to admit that it was ransom. I would not admit it. I don't know, it continues to get the benefit of the doubt, just like Clinton does. Some woman comes out and says, Bill Clinton attacked me back in August. And some, no, Clinton's, those days are long gone. He gets the benefit of the doubt. I don't understand it. Drip, drip, drip. I don't care. Here's the thing. Mr. Snerdley just asked me if there was a drip, drip, drip starting with Obama. We'll have to check the approval numbers. His approval numbers they're holding steady between, depending on the poll, 53 and 56. But look, Obama's numbers are only important insofar as they relate to Hillary. And there is, the Democrats, forget which spokesman it was, a couple of weeks ago, they were out there crowing. Believe me, folks, they think this is over. They think it's in the bag. They think Trump's just pathetic. I mean, even people that, they're hearing all these Republicans say they're going to vote for Hillary. They're here. They are totally in the bag, thinking this is over. But one Democrat spokesman said, yeah, look at Obama's approval numbers. That's all you got to see. If he's at 56, there's no way Hillary loses. So back in June, what the Democrats were telling us was, well, presidential races are really decided in June because she had like an 11-point lead in June. So it's over. You can see. And then Trump came back from that. So the June theory went out the window. And it was replaced by the old, well, whoever gets the biggest bump out of the convention, that's who you can tell, it's the winner. And then that kind of, Hillary, she gets these bumps and she has these leads, but Trump then starts inching back. So then it was last week the guy said, well, no, the way you really know who's going to win this is looking at if the incumbent president, in this case Democrat, if his approval numbers are up, then Hillary's a lock. So using that as a guide, if there is a drip, drip, drip effect on Obama's numbers, and if they do start coming down, then that would be the only reason to care about. Obama's not the future. Hillary is my point. So I don't care what his numbers are, except to the degree that if his numbers do start coming down, it would automatically mean that hers would follow. And the Democrats have been the ones to establish that premise. Here's one more before the break. Kellyanne Conway, Friday on Good Morning America. Who was he talking about when he said he was apologizing for offending people? And did you write the words or did he? What is going on?
He was talking about anyone who feels offended by anything he said, and that's all him. He took extra time yesterday going over that speech with a pen. So that was a decision he made. Those are his words. And I hope that everybody who's criticized him at some point, David, for being insensitive or for mocking someone, at least show some recognition and some forgiveness.
Okay, I got to take a break. I'm looking at the clock. Probably wise that I take a break here, too. Well, the next call I wanted to take, the guy's gone. Columbus, Ohio, and it was time to take the question. His point was Trump has such a huge following. There are thousands and thousands of people at his appearances. And not only are there thousands and thousands and thousands of people, the anti-Trump people show up and try to agitate. I mean, Trump is huge wherever he goes. How can the polls be right with all these people out there? And people continue to ask the question. They continue to hope that electric crowds and large crowds at every rally, if Trump goes to a 20,000-seat venue, it fills. 10,000, it fills. And there are people on the outside trying to get in. And yet none of that seems reflected in the polls, although it is. Trump's numbers, his support numbers, are made up of those people. The only way to explain this, well, not the only way, the best way to explain it is that you look at 2012, the same thing was happening with Romney, particularly in the final week. Romney was, the crowds were going bonkers. They were humongous, indoor, outdoor, and everybody said, man, there's something happening here. There is something going on. The polls are not catching this, and it didn't mean anything. Romney lost by a solid 6, close to it, exactly what most of the polls said would happen. Even if you have a rally of 20,000 people, what percentage of the voting population is 20,000 people? It's really tiny. You want to hear another statistic? I don't know if this is still true, but back in 1982, the NFL sent around a poster to all of the franchises to post throughout the marketing department just to keep everything in perspective. And the poster said, if you know that more people bowl in a week than attend NFL games in a season, then you know America. And it was the way the NFL tried to get everything. Don't get so full of yourselves here. We've got a lot of room for growth. Well, now the NFL's attracting 50, 75,000 people, seemingly, to every game every week. And yet bowling is bigger because you never see it. Doesn't generate crowds in those numbers at venues, but the percentages of people that show up to an event are minuscule compared to the overall population. And that's why it's difficult that's why it's called anecdotal. There's nothing scientific in projecting. You don't know how many of those 20,000 at a Trump rally are actually going to vote. You don't know how many are going to vote for him. You don't know any of that. All you know is the size. George in Londonderry, New Hampshire. Great to have you on the EIB network, sir. Hello.
Good afternoon, Rush. I wanted to call to talk about the genius that is the Clinton Foundation.
Okay.
Specifically, they're selling high at this point in time. Right? They know they're way up in the polls, so they're putting it out there that come November, they're going to be closed for business. So they're telling all these foreign entities they need to get their money in now.
You really think they're going to close for business?
Well, they'll at least be under a higher level of scrutiny, right? After
even though Hillary may be in the White House, Chelsea's going to still need to be something to do. They can still have their foundation. You've got a great point. Here's his point, folks. The Clinton Foundation is letting it be known that the time to get in is closing, that they're going to be shutting down the investment house. They're going to be shutting down the opportunity for you to have a difference made on your behalf. You got to get in now, because when Hillary wins, they got to make it look like they're really putting it all to bed. So you got to get in now, and that means demand is going to be high. And that means the price is going to skyrocket. To get the Clintons' attention, you may have to pay more. And the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to be. And so they're creating a situation. They're selling their access, very high prices, And they're going to have to stop. Or they're going to have to appear to stop. They're never going to stop. Look, I'm not one to besmirch people that work for a living. You know me, and you know that. But what are these people capable of? I mean, what can they really do? If you look at Obama, he's had one job in the private sector, and it was at a law firm, and he felt like he was working as a plant in the enemy. Nobody in Obama's cabinet, did you hear that? Nobody in Obama's cabinet has ever had a private sector job. Nobody has ever had to make a payroll in Obama's cabinet. They don't know. They don't know about the free market economics, but they think everybody in it is an idiot and that they are the brilliant theoreticians. What are they capable of? Can you imagine people getting rich? I mean, $350 million rich giving speeches. It doesn't happen. There is something behind these speeches. There's an implied promise with these speeches. But what are they capable of doing? Well, hey, Limbaugh, you sit there talking, I could be a damn good lawyer. You wouldn't want to face me in court. You're not going to take the time. These people don't want to work that hard. Bill Clinton said that he's going to step down from the Clinton Foundation board of directors if Hillary wins. That's right, because he's got to become the first gentleman. They'll just start some new process up all over again. That's all these people know how to do, is live off of other people's money. Either funding, backers, donations, or what have you. But they are selling high right now. And our caller thinks it's a brilliant scheme they've set up. And hey, I mean, if you strip everything away, if you just look at this for what it is pretty crafty. To leave the White House with you making $400,000 and your wife making zip. And some 20 years, 10 years, 15 years later, whatever, you have $350 million. And you have convinced people all over the world, like the Crown Prince of Bahrain, to send you $32 million. Who among us could do that? Can you imagine calling the Crown Prince of Bahrain, saying, hi, I'm starting a foundation here, and I'm looking at least the same amount of money you gave the Clintons. Yeah, I need $32 million. You think you'd get it? No, not me. That's the point. None of us could, because none of us could pay off. None of us have $32 million worth of whatever the Crown Prince of Bahrain wants. Why is anybody giving these people? But Clinton can't be president again. He's a has-been in that sense. We know that they're not giving these people this money because they're great speech makers. They're not that entertaining. Hillary is a dullard when it gets down to this. Hillary, we talk about Trump's rallies. Hillary, I think another reason she shut her appearances down is that nobody's showing up. I mean, literally 150 people here, 250 at another appearance. She can't even sell out a high school gym. And I know it's hard to understand. How can she possibly be leading in the polls? Well, you're making the wrong comparison. You're comparing crowds and attendance and excitement at these things to politics. And she's got the magic letter next to her name, and that's the D. The number of people are going to vote for her for that reason only. And I'll guarantee you, I will guarantee 99% of the people who are going to vote for Hillary Clinton wouldn't go out of their way to attend a Hillary Clinton rally. But they're going to vote for her. We know this simply because she has got the D next to her name, party loyalty. And Trump's going to get some of those. He's going to get some votes just because there's an R next to his name. It works both ways, but the Democrats have a much bigger advantage in that regard for a host of reasons. But that's for another day. Quick timeout. Back with more in a moment. Here is Terry, Saginaw, Michigan. Great to have you on the program, sir. Hello.
Hi, Rush.
Hey.
Great to be on your program. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you, sir. It's great to have you here.
Well, I listened to some smear campaign from the Clinton machine this weekend concerning Donald Trump making his shirts and ties and things out of country.
Well, yeah, I saw that ad. It says that Trump appearing on the Letterman show, and they're making fun of his shirts and ties supposedly made by the Chicoms.
Yeah, well, they need to get creative with something like, hey, Clinton signed NAFTA, and then taxes went out of sight. Regulations are so bad that we can't even manufacture in our country anymore because of the amount of money it costs just to have a name.
Well, you mean you want that? That's what you want Trump to say?
I'd love Trump to say something like, hey, it's your guy that caused the problem of us making goods and services in our country.
Okay, so here's the deal. Here's what he wants. So the ad that I saw is Trump appearing on Letterman. And Letterman's got some Trump shirts and Trump ties. And I don't know where they're made. I think they're made in China, whatever. He acts cavalier about it. And here's Hillary trying to point out he's a hypocrite because he's trying to make all these other companies bring their jobs home and all their manufacturing here in America. But look at Trump. Trump's making his stuff in China. Trump's importing his stuff from all over. The caller wants Trump to say, well, yeah, the only way I can do it and stay in business because of NAFTA, because Bill Clinton signed NAFTA. And we have to move our jobs overseas in order to be able to make a profit. That's what he wants Trump to come back and say, which means you appear to be worried about this, that this Hillary ad might be effective because it's pointing out hypocrisy and all that. So, well, Trump will have an answer for it at some point. Your call came at the wrong time. I'm out of time. There's much more to say about this, but I'll try to recall tomorrow and get into it then. Folks, hang in there. Not time to panic. I told you that last Wednesday. Everything's cool. Have to take a brief 21-hour break here. Great to be back, and we'll look forward to being right back here same time tomorrow. See you